Hey there, it's Mr. Glitch with the Game Badgers. We're playing Fallout 76 today to bring you my full health explosive melee build so you can do something like this. Yeah, I think that counts as him joining the Mile High Club, because he just got blown in the air. Okay, I'm just doing it for fun at this point. It's fun because it's so unnecessary. Okay, and entertainment aside, this build is very viable and it's my main daily driver. You can absolutely demolish groups of enemies in one shot. Crowd control and tank cores during events, you don't need to micromanage ammunition, craft, or purchase it. And enemies in daily ops that only die to melee aren't even a challenge. Wait, did you see that? Go on. A perfect straddle jump. Judges? And you'll couple this with a two-handed melee weapon with high DPS, which will deal insane amounts of damage. With fast attack speed, the crit meter will fill quickly, and VATS crits will trigger explosions, helping with crowd control. Let's move on to the build. The first weapon you want in your arsenal is a two-handed melee weapon with high damage. I use an instigating warglaive so that I can one-shot most enemies with double damage on the first shot. You can swap that out with a bloodied mod as well, which would take care of enemies that didn't die on the first attack. Next is VATS critical damage for that extra boost to attack. On my other weapons, I swap that out with the 40% extra power attack damage. So if you get that roll, keep it. It's just as good. Lastly, adding 1 strength increases your damage. For this specific weapon, I went Cryoblade for the crowd control. Swap for Fire or Electricity mod for higher damage if needed. Next, you're going to need either the Auto Axe earned from Season 12 or the Chainsaw if you didn't earn it as a reward. Essentially, you're looking for faster swing speed coupled with either Furious, Anti-Armor, or Vampires. Later in the video, I compare all 4 of these weapons to show you damage output. Lastly, I can't stress this enough. While there is a damage reduction in using Vampires, getting it is a god roll. You can tank and survive any boss in the game with the health regain. If you get a Vampires, it doesn't matter the other perks, you'll be unstoppable. But if you get good perks like Strength, you're laughing. Next, you'll need Brotherhood armor. On the chest piece, I use the Jetpack as you'll need it for maneuverability. You're looking for either Strength as a legendary mod for direct damage, or Unyielding for a boost to damage for longer, more taxing fights. But Dress adds damage and energy resistance. I prefer Pocketed on the legs for carry weight as it's easy to get encumbered while grinding for legendary modules. Lastly, the Weighted mod adds armor penetration for melee attacks. I go for armor plated on my backpack for extra damage resistance, and the Shield Urban Operative Under Armor for damage and energy resistance and the 3 strength bonus. These are my serums. Bird Bones, Marsupial, and Speed Demon are essential for closing the distance with enemies and escaping. Twisted Muscles for melee damage, and Carnivore because it caters more towards melee, but that's a separate video in itself. The rest are personal preference. These are my perk cards. I arrange them for a combination of high damage output, damage resistance, and crowd control without solely relying on food and aids. Everything under strength is necessary for damage output. Grenadier affects my legendary perk card collateral damage, and Demolition Expert increases that damage, while also increasing my unstable isotope and electrically charged serums. As for legendary perk cards, you need to max strength for damage. Max Hack and Slash for splash damage against groups of enemies. Keep in mind, although it shows an explosive animation, it is not considered an explosion for damage calculations on other cards. Lastly, Max Collateral Damage, as this one is affected by Grenadier and Demolition Man perk cards. These are generally my stats when I have everything going. I'm pretty tanky with good HP without power armor, and I have lots of carry weight for grinding. These are the most common foods I consume for my build. They are pretty easy to get. Deathclaw Steak? Go to Deathclaw Island and gather Deathclaw meat. Mutant Hound Chops? Go to West Tech and gather Mutant Hound meat. Mutant Hound Stew? The pig stew will usually have Starlight Creepers that other players haven't farmed. Yaoguai Ribs? Go to Site Alpha and harvest Yaoguai meat. And Mudfruit Sweet Tea with Starlight Berries and Mudfruit from Flatwoods. Go to Mortimer at the crater and buy the workout bench for gold bullion. It adds 1 strength when you work out. Go to Samuel at the Foundation and buy the Ally Mall for gold bullion. Speaking with him adds melee damage. Now I'm going to the Mirelurk Queen to compare weapon damage of the 4 DPS weapons I showed you earlier while using food and aids. While speaking in averages, generally the Furious weapons perform better. I suspect Anti-Armor didn't do as well because of the marginal difference it adds when using the Incisor perk card and weighted armor mods. Lastly, you can see that vampires still demolish the queen, but keep in mind you now have longevity in fights. As for my instigating weapon, I'll show you how often you can expect to trigger some sort of splash damage, which is useful for grouped enemies. With everything combined, you should achieve a pretty good rate like the one shown in this clip. 2 to 3 means 2 explosions triggered out of 3 enemies killed. You'll see me jump around a lot. That's just habit from when I use weapons with the power attack increased damage legendary mod to make sure I always trigger it. You'll know it works because your character should slightly teleport to the enemy. 5 to 8 so far. 6 to 9. Nice. 8 to 11, or 73%. Great odds. Here I'm using the Food's Disgust to hit this damage while in a group. Now I'm not in a group, but I'm using Bobblehead Strength, Fury, and Grognak the Barbarian 4 magazine for crit damage. Here I'm using the same, but in a group of 4 this time. I lost track, but this was too funny not to put in the video. And this one I used the explosive bobblehead instead, which surprised me a lot with the damage. Watch this delayed explosion. Apparently it causes enemies to debate their life status. Hilarious. As you can see, these higher numbers are achievable and make this build viable. I hope I convinced you that this build can be fun and also used day to day as an effective build, and of course keeps the game interesting with exciting moments like this former quarterback turned ghoul. Epic.